Welcome to another episode of the Completely Cricket Podcast. As part of a new three-part series called Future Stars, myself and Zaid have each created our own men's T20I squad from Future Stars, players that could be talents in the international game.
Criteria to be a future star is that the player must have had less than 20 T20 international appearances, and they must be under 25 years of age at the time of recording.
We will be doing an ODI and a test version in future episodes. In this episode, we'll be focusing on analysing and discussing our T20 squads and seeing where we've picked different ones and seeing what we think is the proper actual squad.
As well as this, in this episode, we'll be talking about the reality of the appointment of Rohit Sharma as India's captain in all formats, and we will examine the key points for the India-West Indies T20 international series that has recently concluded.
Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I will start by saying out my Future Stars T20I XI, and then Zaid, you can say yours, and then we'll just discuss what we think. There are a lot of differences, I can tell you that. But let me start. So my opening pair would be Josh Phillip and Ishan Kishan. Number 3, Finn Allen, the New Zealand batsman. Pathum Nissanka, Sri Lanka opener. As number 4, Tom Banton, number 5. We've seen him play for England. He opens for England, but I think he'd be more utilised as a number 5. Number 6, Ramanullah Gurbaz. He plays for Afghanistan. Cameron Green, number 7. We've seen him in the Ashes. A very, very exciting talent. 8, George Garton. 9, Ravi Bishnoi. And 10, Mahesh Theekshana, Sri Lanka mystery spinner. What's your... Oh, sorry. I forgot the last person on my squad. That is Naseem Shah. He's number 11. Sorry, Zaid. You say your squad.
Yeah, so as opening, I've got Tom Banton and Prithvi Shaw. Then number 3, I've got Charith Asalanga. Then number 4, Ishan Kishan. Then Josh Philippe. Then number 6, Sam Curran. Then Cameron Green. Then George Garton. Then Rehan Ahmed. He's a very young player, but very good leg spinner, I feel. And then Ravi Bishnoi, another very exciting leg spinner. And number 11, Naseem Shah.
Cool. The first thing for me, I just point out, Rehan Ahmed, I've seen him in the Under-19 World Cup. Do you not think he's pretty young and he hasn't had any experience playing T20 franchises where a lot of the other players in both our squads have had that experience? Do you think would you still put him in our Future Stars T20 squad even though he hasn't had much experience?
Yeah, so when I was drafting this squad, I was actually thinking about that. He's really young. I think he's not even 19. I think he's 17 or 18. It's really young, but I just think he's I think he maybe hasn't got enough experience just yet. But I think he's doing really well with leg spin. I think the way he controls his googly. I think I when I watch him, I almost think a bit of Rashid Khan. And I think maybe a little bit more experience would be ideal. But I think I would probably put him into this squad because I just think he's a very exciting bowler. He's got a long future ahead of him, obviously. But I think he's probably ready to go in a Future Stars team.
Yeah, Rashid Khan comparisons. That is quite a big. That's quite a big statement. It must be. It's got. If you're going to compare him to Rashid Khan, he's got a lot to live up to. But he's a very good player. I think Ishan Kishan as captain. For me, that I don't know. Ishan Kishan, he looks very he sort of reminds me of Virat Kohli in a way. He seems quite headstrong. I've seen him in the IPL. He's a good player, but I don't think, for me, I don't know. He's not got that calmness to be like a captain. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so for me, in my 11, I'm not really sure who could actually be the captain. I thought Ishan Kishan because he's got plenty of experience playing the IPL with Mumbai Indians with players such as Rohit Sharma, Quinton de Kock, Kyle Pollard, and Hardik Pandya. So I thought perhaps it might be a good option for him to be captain since he's seen all these big players playing and there's a lot of them being in that leadership role. So I think probably for this team, for me, he's probably the best option for captain. So what do you think? Who would be your captain?
Yeah, I also have Ishan Kishan on my team, but I'm still not convinced. For me, I think Cameron Green, the fact that he can bat as bat number 7, or even 6 if you're in 1-2, but also be a pace bowler means that obviously he doesn't have the view behind the stumps as like as a typical, if you have a wicketkeeper captain. But I still think he being able to bat and bowl means he'll understand his team a lot more, and especially with the future Stars T20I XI, you got quite young players, new players coming onto the circuit. So I think he'll be for me, he'd be my perfect captain. Yeah. Anything else you've noticed with my team? Anything you want to point out?
Yeah, so in my team, I put Tom Banton as opening, and you've put him at number 5. I feel just maybe because, as you said, he's opened for England. He's been opening for England quite a few times. I just feel he's a bit better to open. I think you're putting in number 5 in the ideal situation in a cricket match. You don't really want to get past your top 4 or top 3. So I think just if you have Tom Banton at number 5, maybe you might not get the most out of him. I think for me, in my 11, his role is to open, get us off to a flying start, as is Prithvi Shaw. What do you think? Do you think it's the correct decision to have him number 5, or what do you think?
No, yeah, that's pretty true. But I've sort of with my team, I sort of gambled on the fact that the top 5 can all shift. Like there's not really any fact. Especially Josh Felipe is opened for I think Sydney Sixers. I think it is. I can't even remember in the BBL. And I think he has done it for Australia a couple of times. There's just so much flexibility in my team. But yeah, I realistically with a future Stars T20 XI, and as we've seen in just general T20 cricket, we obviously hope that it won't get past the top 4. But with people trying to slog as hard as they can, with my lineup, it's a very powerful lineup. It's mainly full of batsmen who are going to smash it. The evidence that Ishan Kishan, Finn Allen, the only I'd say less batsman who goes a less strike rate is probably Pathum Nissanka. He's probably that's why I put him at 4, is because he's just he holds the lineup together. But for me, Tom Banton in his England, T20 exploits and playing as an opener, I don't know. He for me, for me, even if he occupies 10 balls at the top, I don't think he's got that solidity to actually score 20 runs. I think it's sort of hit and miss with him. So if you put him at 5, it's less risk. He doesn't have to score, so it just gives him that freedom to play a lot more attackingly.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Oh yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so just one more thing. So you've got, as you said, Nissanka, he can solidify your batting lineup, and with me, that role is probably number 3, Asalanka. Both Sri Lankan players, both young, both great players. So for me, I think it doesn't, for my lineup, I put Asalanka, but I don't think it matters if I put Nissanka or Asalanka, because they're both great players, and both for me had the same job, just to solidify the batting lineup, whether that's number 3 or number 4.
Yeah. See, pretty much for me it was either Nissanka or Asalanka as that solidity role. But I picked Nissanka because I looked at some statistics, seen his average as well, and just generally the way he bats. I watched some highlights of the Australia Sri Lanka series that's just been going on. Australia did win 4-1, but for me, just in certain points, the way Nissanka was batting, the fact that he took calculated risks, the fact that he didn't go. Obviously, we say he's sort of like the glue of our team, or for you, Asalanka, the glue of your team. He doesn't go at a slow run strike rate either. He's pretty quick. The one thing I would just look at your lineup and just wouldn't be comfortable with is Prithvi Shaw in the team. Honestly, come on, we've seen him play in the IPL, and he's even played for India, but he's literally not been consistent at all. He can't stick a run of performances. You see people like Devdutt Padikkal and Gaikwad and stuff like that, people who haven't had much experience in international level. They can, in the IPL, they can score 400 runs a season, 500, 600 runs a season. But Prithvi Shaw hasn't really been able to do that. I think it's just a lot of talent and just not any end performances. What do you feel?
Yeah, so it's a great point about Prithvi Shaw, and his consistency is amazing. But we often I watched a documentary once. I think Nasser Hussain did it. It was cricket in Mumbai, and there was some talk about Prithvi Shaw. Some people were saying he's the next Sachin Tendulkar. Or at the time, then yes, maybe. But maybe now, perhaps his consistency isn't great. But I think when he does perform, he's just amazing player. He looks a bit like Sachin Tendulkar. Obviously, you want a bit more consistency out of him. So I see what you mean, but I think I would give him a chance there. And if it doesn't work, then maybe, I don't know, someone like Shupman Gill perhaps, or maybe as you put in your team, Finn Allen. He's obviously a wonderful player, very young, obviously. And also in my team, for me, I've got Privy Shaw in there, and as you said, I agree, his consistency is not great. But I think I've got plenty of options there for batting. Tom Banton, Shaw, Salanka, Kishan Philippe, Curran. My batting really kind of goes all the way down to Rehan Ahmed. Really, Rehan Ahmed, he for the under-19 team, he was a bowling all rounder, so he can bat a bit. So I guess I've got batting till number 9. So I think pretty sure I would give him a chance, but yeah, I think I get what you mean with the consistency. Perhaps a Finn Allen, maybe better in that position as you've put in your team. Just one last thing, I think. I've put Sam Curran at number 6, and you haven't got him in your team at all. So, what do you think on Sam Curran?
Yeah, before I go to that one, I was just going to say I agree with you because this is a future stars team. So, we've got to put a gamble on players who we think have a lot of talent. None of these players are really that consistent, obviously, because they've been either not had much opportunity at international level or just, they're young. But yeah, in terms of Sam Curran, the main reason I didn't put him in my team is because, I think everyone knows when you hear Sam Curran, everyone knows that he plays for England. Obviously, he might not. I think he technically qualifies for this for our squads, but because the fact that he's pretty well known in the international circuit, I just thought leave him out to try and include people that are less well known. Just that's what I felt. Also, I'm not gonna. I don't think Sam Curran's good enough to be number 6 batsman. He's just okay. He can bat, but in a T20 circuit, a number 6 player, if there's a top order collapse, a number 6 could be relied to make a big partnership. I don't think Sam Curran would do well, but it really depends on your it depends on the game. Is it a game where the top order have done well and it's just anyone comes in and just smacks as hard as they can, or is it a game where the top order just completely collapsed? Top 4 have scored small numbers and the 5, 6, 7 needs to sort of repair. But for me, just go on the safe side and pick someone who could do both, and that's why I picked Ramnullah Gurbaz, because he can smash it, but he can also he's a batsman. I think next thing we'll talk about to do with our future stars T2011 is the actual who we've picked and such. So like how many batsmen, how many bowlers, keepers, things like that. So for mine, I've picked in terms of bowlers. Just going to start with them. I've picked my pace bowlers are Cameron Green, George Garton, and Naseem Shah. And I've got a leg spinner in Ravi Bishnoi and an off spinner in Mahesh Theekshana. And yeah, I haven't got any other bowlers. For you, you've got Sam Curran, obviously bowls pace, Cameron Green, George Garton, and Naseem Shah. So 4 pace bowlers, and you've got 2 leg spinners. So what do you think is the best approach when you're picking a T20 team? Do you want would you go 4 paces, 3 paces? Would you put more spinners in or is it really depending on the surface?
It'll be the first thing that comes to mind. I don't really want 5 bowlers. I want to have that 6th bowling option in case something goes wrong. I just want if I'm picking a team, I want to have obviously 5 bowlers, but I would love to have a 6th option, which is why I've put Sam Curran there, because as you said, he can bat, but maybe number 6 isn't the best position. In fact, we saw him a couple of times in the IPL last year with CSK. He was opening the batting, which was a real shocker, but he actually did really well. So that could be an option. But I just think 6 bowlers is best. And in terms of paces, I think spinners probably really, I guess with spinners, I think it depends on the surface or what dimensions are of the ground, stuff like that. Because you can't, with England, actually, England have had a history of not actually wanting to take leg spinners, which is actually a real shame for someone like Rehan Ahmed. But I'm hoping in the future that changes. So I would probably go with 2 spinners. So we both, I think we both have 2 spinners. Yes, yeah. So the only difference is with our spinners, I've got Rehan Ahmed instead of you've got Theekshana. So you've got off spin, leg spin, and for me, I would go 2 spinners. I think Rehan Ahmed, very good pace, and we talked about him earlier. And with paces, I would go with something like 3 main paces and then 1 6 bowling option, as I said. For you, what do you think?
Yeah, no, looking back at it now and listening to you, I honestly feel like I think I probably missed out on it. I was looking for one more um pace bowling all rounder to swap off for Ramla Gurbaz, but I was struggling. Without Sam Curran as an option, Cameron Green, and then I couldn't really see many others. And I think there were a few, but they were too like they weren't performing well enough to put into future stars type thing. So yeah, I think that's the main thing for me. Yeah, and I want to keep up spin, leg spin, keep all options open. Uh, you've seen teams like India go with more spinners and stuff because that's just depending on the pitch. You know, they've gone with Ravi Bishnoi, Chahal, and some others. Venkatesh Iyer was one of my options. Could have been an option, but he had too many international experience, too many international appearances, and also I think he was 26. I think he is 26, so I couldn't pick
Yeah.
him. But yeah. Um, yeah, so that's cool. I think the main thing, the people we've had in both our squads, Josh Felipe, Ishan Kishan, and who else we got? Cameron Green, 100%. I think Cameron Green is just like your go-to player because he's so good. And he's a pace bowler and a batsman and a capable batsman. George Garton's in both of our teams. We haven't spoken much about him. If I were to put in an extra batsman, or swap it for put in an extra batsman if I really wanted to. Not extra batsman. If I were to pick more of an all rounder, I would take off George Garton probably because he can bat, he doesn't contribute that much. Any other common players between our teams?
We've got Tom Banton. So the interesting thing is with our teams, we've got Tom Banton and Josh Philippe, but they're both in the opposite order. So I've got Tom Banton number one, and Josh Philippe at five, and you've got the opposite, Josh Philippe at one, Tom Banton at five, and we've discussed a bit about it. We haven't really talked about Josh Philippe, have we? So yeah, for me, I think he's more of a middle order batsman. I think he can just get the strike moving, turning the strike round, and just keep the flow of runs from. Hopefully, what I've got is a flying start from Banton, pretty sure. Then I've got Aslanka solidifying. Hopefully, he's still there at this point. And then Ishan Kishan, he can come in, get some few runs. Ideally, he's staying in. But Josh Philippe had that role at number five for me. He's there to obviously any batsman has to whack the bad ball, but Josh Philippe, I want him getting singles off the good balls as well, and then just continue rotating the strike. And I just don't think Don Banton is the correct player for that role. So obviously at number five, I think I'm assuming your Tom Banton's there to play with freedom, as you said, and just attack a bit more. So what do you think about the fact that we've got two players same but just in completely different order?
To be fair, I disagree with Josh Philippe for him being five in your squad, mainly because for in the BBL, which is probably after IPL the second best T20 franchise tournament, he has proven he scored so many runs and so consistently at number batting in the top order. He actually opens, and the fact that he sometimes might take a bit of a slower start to get going, but then accelerates means that if you put him lower down, then it's just a waste of balls. You know, when you want to be scoring 12 runs and over in the last 5 overs, you don't want Josh Felipe to come in because he could take too long. It's all like the debate about Dawid Malan. Like if Dawid Malan were to go lower, it would make it obviously as a number three, he's performing his role well because he's taking up balls, but he's scoring. So Josh Felipe sometimes takes a while to get in, which means that, well, I mean a while, I mean only if it takes, he won't be going at 200 strike rate at the start, but I think he has to open because if you put him at number five, it's just going to eat up on balls where you want to be scoring overs where you're going to be scoring 12 runs plus and over. Last 5 overs, if Josh Felipe comes in, it's there's no point. I didn't see this point. Yeah, so that's it for our Future Stars segment. Next episode we'll be doing the ODI, and then after that the Test team. The T20 is probably, I think it's probably the easiest one to do because it's just, T20 is a lot of players available, whereas it's going to be a bit more difficult for Test especially. Anyway, if you enjoyed that segment, please take time out of your day and give us a like, subscribe, and share with anyone you know who likes cricket. It really means a lot to us. Anyway, the next segment is going to be the India West Indies series that is just going on right now. 30-20s today. As far as we know, India lead the series 2-0, I think. this is not, because obviously the series hasn't finished. There's not much to cover on it, but I think as personally after watching the series, the first two, there's been obviously questions about Rishabh Pant in Test cricket. To be honest, I think there's questions with him in all formats. He's in all formats. He's the type of guy who just comes in, swings the bat. He can score, but he sort of lacks quite a lot of control. Do you think he's a long-term India prospect, because he's been made vice captain of one of the squads? I think it's a Test squad. I can't remember, or it's a limited overs, but he's been made vice captain. So it's sort of suggesting India are looking at him as a long-term player. Do you think the questions about his ability and his control have been answered from his performance? I think he scored 65 in the India-West Indies second T20. Do you think they've been answered, or do you think there's still questions on him?
I don't think from one innings you can answer questions of someone. And he in the first T20, I think he scored what, 5 or 6. So yeah, with his, as you said, with control, there's been a lot of talk in the previous years about his control. A lot of people have suggested that just let him be, just let him play how he is. It's working. But I think now has come a time where you've got to, as a coach, Indian coach, maybe just pull him aside, have a chat with him, because he can't just continue going just going for everything, just swinging the bat randomly. When I watch him, he scores runs, but it doesn't look very nice. And obviously in T20 and maybe even ODI, it's not about if it looks nice, but in Test matches, you've got to be careful. You can't just randomly swing the bat. So I think, especially in Test cricket, that he's got to be pulled aside and maybe have a chat, calm yourself down a little bit. And if that's not for him, then yeah, that's okay. But maybe he can't. Maybe Test cricket, I don't think he's going to be able to play for long term for India. I think T20 he'll continue, because whatever he's doing is working for him. And his consistency, sometimes it's a bit questionable, but then he does bring it back up, and he's still fairly young, so he's got plenty of time to go. So I think he'll stay in T20. ODI, I would think probably stay. His keeping is actually very good as well, so no questions with keeping. So I think he'll probably stay more for his keeping, and his batting. He can come in and swing the bat and get some runs. So I think he'll stay in the T20 and ODI. But I think Test match, I don't think he's going to be staying for long term.
Yeah, so there's no questions on his keeping by far. Like, his keeping's pretty good. You know, it's the consistency that's a question. But I think he's coming at 4 before 3. I think if you want to keep him in the team long term, I think you can more utilize him as a number 5 and come in if the top 2, 3 have done really well and you just need a bit of power. Yeah, I still question his ability. If there's a collapse, he'll just go with it. He's not going to exactly provide a strong resistance, and win the match for India and steer them to a victory. So I'm not really sure with him. But yeah, there's not really much else to the India-West Indies series. The 30-20 is actually going on right now. The last thing that we're going to talk about in this episode is actually Rohit Sharma becoming the captain of the India team in all 3 formats, Test, ODI, and T20, as well as Chiteshwar Pujara, the Rock as he is known, and Ajinkya Rahane have both been dropped from the the most recent Test squad. I think it's for a series against Sri Lanka. Both have been dropped. It's a bit of a surprise. It's sort of a surprising move, yet it really isn't, because it's been sort of expected. Rahane and Pujara have been in pretty horrible form for the last year or so. For me, I'm 100% expecting Pujara and Rahane to be dropped. Probably the series before it should have been dropped. I think they're given too many chances and they've not contributed, and apparently they still have a chance to play Test cricket. It's just they want them to the selectors want them to rediscover their form in the Ranji Trophy that's currently going on. Yeah, what do you feel about them being dropped? Like, do you think it's the end for them? Do you think there's a chance for them to come back? What do you feel?
As you said, it's a bit of a shocker, but expected. And I think that the reason for that is that when they've been big players for some years now, and they've just been dropped suddenly. It's a shocker to the world, but then it's also expected. But the reason I think it's a shocker is because we've been expecting it for a while now, and then it just didn't happen. So then it suddenly happened now, and I think I'm not really sure. I think Pujara just when we say Test cricket is about patience and playing defensively and just staying in for a long time. I think Pujara has taken that a bit too literally in his whole career. He was a wonderful player, but I think as he said, he's the Rock, known as the Rock, and I just think he's not like he still needs to have intent in any form of cricket. In Test cricket, it's just about that swing when pace bowlers are bowling, just with that swing ball, which balls to leave. He has a perfect technique, but I don't think he has much intent to score. So I think with Pujara, it's correct that he's probably gone now. I think probably coming to the end of his career. Rahane, I'm not really sure. I think probably he's been fairly quiet over the last few months or so and for the last few series. So I think both of them probably coming to the end of their career. Rahane might come back for a couple more games. Maybe I think he's been doing well in the Ranji Trophy recently. I'm not sure, but I think Rahane could be back. Although I think Pujara is probably end of his career now.
Yeah, Pujara. The real thing is, I think it's because it's coincided with Rohit Sharma becoming the Test captain, so therefore being captain of all three formats. I think it's sort of like the removal of the old guard with Virat Kohli being stripped of his captaincy, Pujara going, Rahane going. I think it's just sort of cleansing in a way of the team, just making it refreshing it in a way. Rahane went from vice captain to drop. That's a pretty shock. Vice captain is quite sort of a symbol. It's more experienced players who are the vice captain. Obviously, you got your captain, and the second best would be your vice captain. I don't think he's not justified his role as vice captain. He's not justified his position in the team, nor has Pujara. The second part of that, what we were saying was Rohit Sharma being the all format captain. The first thing that strikes me when I think of Rohit Sharma being captain of all three formats is that it's not really a permanent move. It doesn't seem Rohit Sharma is towards the end of his career, or he's a good batsman. He could probably play for another 2-3 years, I think. The fact that he's been made captain sort of seems like India, the selectors are trying to put him as like an interim appointment, keep him there until another young player is like more experienced enough and plays consistently enough to be the captain. I don't know. What do you feel about that? It just doesn't feel like a permanent move as such to me.
Yeah, so I think that with Rohit Sharma, I think as you said, he's not like he's coming to the end of his career now. Obviously, he's an amazing player. I think it's not the best decision to put him as captain right at the end of his career. You want him to any player really when they're playing in their career, they want to have a nice end to the career, and I think that leads to me thinking that it's probably just a temporary thing, just waiting till there's someone else that can take the role. But for now, I think Rohit Sharma kind of has to stay. But the problem is, I don't think he's good enough to be able to captain for a few years. So I think India is more a forced decision than anything. It's just really a temporary thing until they can find something. So yeah.
Yeah, it's completely clear though that Rohit Sharma's appointment is temporary. It's not a long-term movement. It's just to keep someone there, someone who can at least guide them, not so that the team is just not completely inexperienced. And the fact that it's coincided with Pujara and Rahane being dropped, is sort of leaving the India Test team slightly lacking experience, well, less experience than before. But I think that's a good thing, because they've with Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Cheteshwar Pujara, and Rahane, you got 4 pretty experienced players, and 2 of them not scoring. I think 2 players is enough. Kohli and Sharma, both of them can help nurture the rest of the team, and it gives opportunity for new talent. And I think that with a country like India who are full of talent, that's the best way to go. So it's nice that they're they're sort of getting ready for the next era as such. Who do you think is going to lead this next era if we consider that Pujara Rahane being dropped and Rohit Sharma being captain, Kohli also being removed as captaincy is like the end of an era? Who do you think is going to be like the key players of the next era for India?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think coming in at the moment, Rishabh Pant. I know we've talked about him as consistency, but I think that's the way to go at this point. In the future, I think he'll be captain, and I think future players to look out for. I reckon someone like Ruturaj Gaikwad is coming very immediately in the IPL and playing amazingly, opening with fast frequency. And so players to come for me, Rishabh Pant, Ruturaj Gaikwad, Venkatesh Iyer. These 3 players doing great. And we've discussed earlier as well. We're pretty sure. He's got it's his future stars that we discussed earlier. So he's got some time ahead of him. I think he needs to just keep going, and he'll get there. And I think he's another one to look out for. And then one more, I would guess, someone like Harshal Patel, great bowler, and I think he'll be coming in very soon. Coming in, I think eventually, I'm wanting him to get that main role as one of the best, like being sort of almost leading the attack. This is because we've seen him he got 30 something wickets in the IPL, absolutely incredible. And so those are probably the main players for me to watch out for. And I just think Rohit Sharma, once he's down as captain, then I think it'll probably be Rishabh Pant.
I don't know. I sort of feel like there's one key person for me is sort of been avoided. I'd say Shubman Gill. I don't know. He's not. I don't think he's been around. He used to be quite. I've seen him bat, and he's got really good technique. His aggressive shots are very good, and he's not like he's sort of you would put him as an opposite Cheteshwar Pujara. He's not slow at all. His scoring rate. I'd also put Mohammad Siraj. I think he's sort of like now he's sort of made himself as a key player of the team, as well as if you look at Harshal Patel, you would say another player in a similar category to him is Avesh Khan, who also took quite a few wickets in the most recent IPL. I think he's another possibility. I think it's quite there's a lot of options because as you can see in the T20 team, there's a lot of new players coming in through, and those could translate up to the ODI and Test teams. You know, they could have multi-format players. Yeah, any other key players?
Yeah, so I think for me, yeah, you probably covered it. So I went with Richard Gaikwad, you said Shubman Gill. So I think those, as we've discussed, are probably the main players. And I just think, yeah, India have got so much talent coming through the ranks. Just thinking ahead, actually, I think India is going to go a long way because I don't know, they won the Under-19 World Cup, I think 4 times. So I think India are going to come out like absolutely amazingly strong in the coming years. Another team to look out for, I think Afghanistan. They're looking great. And just as in the future, I think teams like England, West Indies, and West Indies is a bit like dead now. Not to be rude to them, but West Indies just going a bit, yeah. So and then teams like England, they're in the 19 team looks good, but their young players looking good, and they've also got players. But I think for me, coming through the ranks, I think India have got some amazing young stars coming through. Gaikwad, Gill, pretty sure, Avesh Khan, loads of players really. So for me, those are probably the main players, and I think India a team to look out for in the future.
Yeah, they've got compared to even England. I'm not convinced with the young players. I don't really think they've got that enough supply of talent. I agree with you. India, there's looks like it's going to be a period of India dominance, but the issue is that India has been dominant for a while recently, but it hasn't translated to trophies. So like that is another that's another something that they need to consider. It's not they haven't won loads of trophies. If they have, then you could say fair enough. You've won it, that you've dominated, but you've won a good amount of trophies and you're the best team in the world. But they haven't shown that. So like I'm not really. It's a bit of it's either or in a way. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. If you liked the Future Stars T20 XI segment of this episode, we're going to do a similar thing with the ODI squad next episode. Me and Zaid will be making another squad each, and we'll do a test one the episode after. Thank you, Zaid, for calling me. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share with anyone who likes cricket.